Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Fourth and Frames. I'm Rhett Manuel with my co-hosts Chris Battistel and Drew Scott. Tonight we welcome in a very special guest, actor Scott Porter, in the second half of the show to discuss his clear eyes, full hearts, can't lose players for the rest of the season. And then in the first segment, we're going to talk about our bussin', discussing, and mid players for week 11 of the fantasy football season. Y'all ready to ride? Let's do it. Fellas, tell me, Drew, first let's talk off the Hotel Drew is in the house. How the heck are we doing tonight, buddy? Drew?
Sorry, so in typical hotel fashion, my my hotel internet cut out right there. So I have no idea what question you asked me, but I can tell you that I'm doing wonderful, though.
And you hit it right on the head. Chris, how about you?
Nailed it. I'm doing great, man. A little horse still from the weekend. I was at the Argos game with my kid. They did lose. First home loss all season. Of course, it was the game that would have sent him to the Grey Cup. So a little bit of a heartbreaking game for us as Toronto Argos fan. My first live CFL experience, my kid's first live CFL experience. And the best part about it was when we were walking out of the game, he looked up at me and said, "Dad, I think I like football now." And it was just like,
oh, yes.
That's such a tone, man. I was ready to go after that.
Yeah, man, that is awesome. That is awesome. So let's speak on football, and let's talk about, as usual, let's go around the frames and let's talk about our weeks in fantasy football. Chris, go ahead and lead us off. How'd your week go, buddy?
Good, man. I secured the Scott Fishbowl 13 playoff spot with the 13 wins. So getting that done, being the only one in this room at least to secure that. I'm sorry, Drew. It's pretty good. Rhett's on his way. He's at the point threshold at the moment, but Alamo Freeze, there it is. That's your division right there at Drew Park. But yeah, other than that, pretty good. Rolling college fantasy semis this week. I'm in a few of those, so I'm pretty excited for week 11.
Drew, go ahead and tell us. I know the Scott Fishbowl is a bit of a sore subject for you, but what about everything else, man?
Yeah, I'm not talking about that at all. But the two dynasty leagues that I'm in, I chose to go the rebuild route in both dynasty leagues. Right now, I'm in position to have the 101 in one, the 103 in the other. So that's going really well. And then one redraft league, I'm first in my division, second in overall in points, and then in the Megala Bowl, which is the other big redraft tournament that I play in. It's somewhat similar to the Scott Fishbowl, except there are over 20,000 people in this one. I'm in like the top 2,600, and I'm number one in my division in points, sitting at third place right now. But with the points coming my way, those W's are going to keep coming my way too. So I'm looking for both my redraft leagues outside of the Scott Fishbowl. Things are beautiful. I just don't want to talk about Scott Fishbowl. That's all.
Listen, we're not going to make you do anything you don't want to do, but I'll go ahead and talk about Scott Fishbowl for myself. Was on a bit of a schneid there. Got a couple big wins last week. They put me back in the playoff hunt, hoping to qualify this week. Take out all my Alamo Freeze adversaries, including Andrew, including Scott Porter, who we'll talk to later. Just trying to take them all out one bite at a time. Couple dynasty leagues doing really well in. Warrior Bowl had a little bit of a losing streak there. Finally got back on the winning side in our Fantasy and Frames Dynasty League. A couple home leagues that I'm doing pretty well in as well. So overall, having a good season, had a good week. Just got to keep trucking, man. It's the end of the season. Playoff drive is here. You still got to do your best no matter what. So with that being said, guys, let's go ahead and let's get into our weekly news and notes and the impact on fantasy football. So, yeah, we got a few things that are on the horizon this week. First off, Justin Fields been out the past month with that thumb injury. He is going to start on Sunday. First thing I want to ask you is, Drew, we saw Tyson Bagent. We saw him have his highs. We saw him have some pretty good lows. This has to be the immediate upgrade for the Bears on offense, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We can finally trust DJ Moore again. He's probably good for more than 50 yards for the first time in a month. So it feels good as far as that goes. I'm more curious to see how the running back room shakes out with Khalil Herbert coming back. Deontay Foreman's been playing well. I'm pretty interested to see how that shakes out. So I've got my eyes more on that. All systems go for Fields and for DJ Moore and even Cole Kmet moving forward. We're all good there again.
Yeah, Cole Kmet has actually been pretty solid, even with Tyson Bagent at quarterback. He's actually emerged pretty well over this past month or so. Chris, we're going to go ahead and throw the Miami Dolphins segment over to you. Everybody's fantasy darling for the beginning of the year, Devon Achane, is designated for return. He should get some snaps this week. Jalen Waddle listed as questionable, but looks like he's on track to play. Tell me how you think this Achane snap share is going to fall this week.
I mean, at the very least, his first game back, he should see a limited amount of snaps in that Miami Dolphins backfield. It's not the week for me, at least, to fire him into my lineup. So I'm going to wait a week to see him work back into motion, get his wheels back going. And then the following week, I'm plugging him in. And then rest of the season, he's the guy for me in that Miami Dolphins backfield. Like we talked about last week, Raheem Mostert didn't do anything special to really take the job from him. So when Devon Achane comes in there, we've seen the explosive plays that he can produce for fantasy producers. He's going to be a guy that I want to roster the rest of the season. So make sure, if there is the slight chance that Devon Achane is on your waivers, that you're going out there and putting in the claim for him.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with that completely. We have on the Cincinnati Bengals, T. Higgins aggravated a hamstring injury. He is being marked as out for this game. I mean, Jamar Chase has already been on a tear to begin with. Is there anybody that either of you guys see as being a person that you would even flex at wide receiver besides Chase on that Bengals roster?
Yeah, Boyd played decent in the time that Higgins was out. Trenton Irwin caught the touchdown. He didn't see a lot of usage, but he did, like I say, did catch that one touchdown last week. So there, for me, if I was going to pick out of the two between Trenton Irwin and Tyler Boyd, if I'm in dire need of a wide receiver to flex in, I'm going to put Boyd. I feel comfortable about it.
A few other things we got going on here. Deshaun Watson out for the season, is going to have shoulder surgery, maybe some speculation of a rotator cuff. Just a weird situation all around. Does everybody take a hit in that backfield, Drew? Does everybody take a hit in that offense, Drew, or what?
Yeah, it has to be an immediate downgrade for everybody. I mean, the receivers are going to take a hit because the rookie's going to be starting at quarterback. And then I think even the running back room probably takes a hit because the quarterback that coming in is more of a running quarterback. So he's going to take away some rushing attempts as well. So I think it's bad news across the board, maybe except for David Njoku. I don't know. The one start that he did have, he seemed to favor targeting Njoku. So we'll see how that plays out as the year goes on. But as somebody who has Amari Cooper in one of my two contending redraft teams, I'm a very sad person today.
Yeah, it's a tough spot for Browns wide receivers for sure right now. Alexander Mattison in concussion protocol. The trend has kind of been that everyone who has a concussion tends to miss a game this year. So we should see quite a bit of Ty Chandler this week. And then lastly, Pat Freiermuth, always have trouble with that name. Hamstring injury designated for return this week. Guys, thoughts that Pittsburgh offense has been a little bit rough around the edges, but does he add value? Does he have value going forward? What's up with that?
I'll just say this. I said this on the waiver show last night. I would pick him up right now, but I wouldn't play him this week because he has a really tough matchup this week, but he has one of the best schedules for the fantasy playoffs for tight end. So if you're hurting at tight end, he might not help you this week, but his schedule for the fantasy playoffs is pretty. So pick him up, stash him, and then play him whenever the matchups get a little prettier here in a few weeks.
Perfect, man. Couldn't agree more. So for everyone that is tuning in tonight, first off, we appreciate you so much. If you're on X/Twitter, we can't get your questions. Head on over to YouTube to shoot us any questions you might have. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe to everything we're doing. A lot of good stuff going on here in the Fantasy and Frames family. But right now, guys, let's go in and let's talk about our usuals, our bussin', discussing, and mid players.
Go and try your luck. Test me in again, we let it rain. Please don't start us up. Got that black and white, that yang and yang. Mr. Officer, please don't search us. We don't.
Man,
let that one go a little bit more. I like that. I like that beat on there.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good. All right, guys. So bussin', discussing, and mid for all of our viewers. Our bussin' players are people that we expect to fire up no matter what and outperform their current spots on the week in terms of the rankings. Our discussing players are players we expect to underperform. Albert, it's great to see you as usual. And our mid players are guys that we expect to have very solid floors with their matchups this coming week. So with that being said, we're going to get into our bussin' players. I'm going to go ahead and let Drew lead us off, man. What's going on with your guy?
Yeah, so I was going to go with Nico Collins here, but with him not practicing at all last week, missing the game, and he was only limited today, I wanted to make sure to give you someone that I knew would be playing this week. So I guess this is my way of telling you that I really like stacking the Houston Texans offense because I'm going with Tank Dell against the Arizona Cardinals. If I can't have one Texans receiver, give me the other one. So he's my busting player this week. A big talking point for rookie receivers has been waiting for their post-bye bump. And it's been a very real thing, especially the last few years. And it's been a real thing for Tank Dell this year as well. Since their week 7 bye, he's been the first read on 36% of pass plays, which is easily the highest number on the team. He's got an ADOT of 15.4, which leads the team even over Noah Brown, who's been on an absolute tear the past couple weeks. He's got 3 end zone targets, 2 of which he's converted to touchdowns, and then he's got 3 total touchdowns since their bye week as well. He's played almost 90% of the snaps during that time, and he's been the wide receiver 8 in points per game and half-point PPR since their bye week. And now there's no doubt that Nico Collins not playing last week boost those numbers up a tad. But the good news is that even if Nico does play this weekend, which I hope he does, there's still room for both of them to eat. The Arizona Cardinals have been the 8th best matchup for fantasy receivers based on schedule-adjusted fantasy points given up to the position. And the best part about this is that 76% of the fantasy points they're giving up to wide receivers is going to wide receivers that line up out wide. So both Nico Collins and Tank Dell line up over 70% of the time out wide. So if there is a wide receiver on this team that I think doesn't have a great week, it's going to be Noah Brown for me. So Fantasy Pros Week 11 ECR has Tank Dell as the wide receiver 22. I've got him up at wide receiver 16.
Love it, love it, love it. Tank Dell has been on an absolute tear lately. And just a reminder for you guys, Scott Porter will be here soon. So stay tuned in. You guys haven't missed him yet. He'll be on pretty soon. As soon as we finish this segment, we're going to go ahead and throw it to him. But as of right now, we have a question that is coming in the chat. Rugaru, we'd love to see you as usual. Andrew Park says he thinks Najee Harris is a great buy this week, still getting tons of touches despite the Warren starter news. What are your thoughts on that? Chris, go ahead. Najee Harris still a buy or what?
Yeah, I'm buying Najee Harris. Great end of season schedule for the running back position when you're breaking down fantasy football for that aspect. Yes, Jaylen Warren was named the starter for the Pittsburgh Steelers, but when Najee Harris was the starter for the Pittsburgh Steelers, Jaylen Warren was still involved. Now that the Pittsburgh Steelers have that rookie lineman in Broderick Jones in that offensive line, the run game for the Pittsburgh Steelers has become a force to be reckoned with, and Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren should be buys for you for the rest of the season. So yeah, definitely buying into Najee Harris.
Buy Najee Harris. Buy Jaylen Warren. And if you're subscribing to our TikTok channel, just know that Jaylen Warren is currently doing his part in fantasy football. So next up, Chris, we have a perfect segue talking about running backs. Go ahead and give us your bustin' player for week 11.
Yeah, my busted player, week 11, none other than Brian Robinson, running back for the Washington Commanders. And every time I feel like I talk about this guy, I need 50 Cent's Many Men playing in the background just because of the backstory of Brian Robinson and what he went through before he even set foot on an NFL field. Fantasy Pros ECR this week, RB17, so just outside of our threshold of the top 15 RBs. He's the clear running back 1 for the Washington Commanders, dominating in rush attempts over the last 4 games, holding a 61% share. He has hit 70% of the rush attempts for the Washington Commanders in weeks 8 and 9. So he's on the field a ton. And when he's on the field, he is getting the ball. 28 fantasy points last week, highlighted by his usage in the receiving game. I believe he finished as the overall running back 1, 6 targets, 6 receptions, 119 yards with that touchdown. 43% of the route participation, tied his season high. RB1 in yards per reception for all running backs with 12 yards, tied as RB1 in receptions of 20 or more yards with 6. Brian Robinson is a steady plug-and-play RB2, RB3 overall the last 3 weeks in fantasy points, above expectation, behind only Keaton Mitchell and Gus Edwards, averaging 15.6 fantasy points in those 3 games. Week 11, they're called the Giants, but this year they are anything but football giants. That is New York. They are currently allowing the fifth most fantasy points to running backs on the season. Running backs are averaging 19.3 fantasy points per game versus the Giants over the last 3. Last week, we just saw Rico Dowdle go off for the Dallas Cowboys against these G-men. Washington is going to continue to look to win, continue to put their foot on the gas pedal to get those wins and make a push for the playoffs. 3 games versus the Giants, he's averaging 69.3 yards on 13.7 attempts. That's 5.1 yards per carry. My projection for B-Rob, 14 carries, 85 yards, a touchdown, 4 receptions, and 40 yards. And I'm going to give him, I had him for like half a chance for a receiving touchdown, but he's been so involved in the receiving game lately. I'm going to give him that receiving touchdown. He gets 2 this week.
Ooh.
2 tutties for B-Rob. What a call. Put that on the board. Mark that down, Gator J, because we may have ourselves a short right there. So let's go ahead and get straight into it with my bussin' player for the week. I'm going to go with a Scott Porter special, being that he's a big Denver Broncos guy. And trust me, it's not just because Porter's coming, but Courtland Sutton against the Minnesota Vikings. Guys, Courtland has been on a tear this year, and he is the ECR wide receiver 31. Tied his season high last week at both receptions and targets. 8 receptions, 11 targets. Yardage wasn't all there, but he did catch that unbelievable touchdown pass. Ooh. And it's beautiful. God, gorgeous. And that's been his biggest asset this year, is that in 7 of 9 games this season, he has scored a touchdown, and he scored each of the past 4 weeks. So if there's something that's very clear, he has Russell Wilson's eye inside the red zone, and that is a huge thing we have going on for him. And he's facing a Minnesota defense that is very much mid, right around the middle of the pack in terms of NFL pass defense. 224 passing yards given up per game. But these are some interesting stats to go along with that defense. They've given up the 2nd most completions in the league with 244, and they've given up the 6th worst completion percentage in the league at 68.9%. So there are some completions to be had against that defense without a doubt. And they've also given up the 8th most passing touchdowns. They've given up 14 this year. And as we just discussed, Courtland Sutton is a guy who you want to be looking at in the red zone. And guys, Russ is back. He took a year off. He went on a hiatus. He had to have more.
No, Rhett.
I thought it was me just because I'm in a hotel.
Oh, Rhett. He was ripping there.
He was cooking. He was cooking like Russ, man.
Okay, no, Rhett.
He's back.
He's back.
So the bad news with that is that he has yet to have a 100-yard receiving game this season, but one has to be on the horizon, and that might be this week. Yes, he has an 18.2% touchdown rate, and that's not sustainable, but he also has averaged 2.24 fantasy points per target and a 30.6% dominator rating, which is telling us a lot of things. Is that just like I was cooking, Courtland Sutton has been cooking all season. Yards after the catch has been an issue. He has only had 67 all season, but that's no problem. He's been efficient even without it. I see a big week ahead for Courtland Sutton, somewhere around 7 catches, 85 yards, a touchdown in a 5th consecutive week. And he might end up being the key to a few title teams this season.
I like it, man. I like it. I'll tell you right now, I was out on Courtland Sutton this offseason, and I've been dead wrong. Our boy Kyle Ziegler, he put out a redraft target profile on Courtland Sutton, and he was dead right. And I think this call is dead right, too. I mean, the man just keeps finding the end zone, and at some point, you just got to take it for what it is. And Russ and Sutton, they've clearly got a connection, especially whenever they get down in the scoring area. So I like it.
Yeah, so quickly to recap, our busting players so far, we had Tank Dell against Arizona, Brian Robinson against the Giants, and Courtland Sutton against the Minnesota Vikings. And Rugaru has a question. He says, clearly it's Sutton to Russ, and he has a slammed roster. Would he cut Marvin Mims? Guys, I would say so. What about you guys?
Yep.
Yeah,
go
I
for
think
it.
you can. Yeah, it's tough because Mims finally got like the most snaps he's had all year. But he was just out there doing cardio basically. Like it's like whenever he gets limited snaps, he gets targets. Whenever he gets all the snaps, he gets no targets. So I don't know what to make of it.
One thing I can make of it is that I saw a video on the internet where he's taking pictures with fans, and they're like, he'll get the ball. He goes, nah, he don't throw it to me anyway. So that's just one of those things where I was like, oh, he knows where he's at right now in this offense, which is basically a pretty big decoy situation. But let's go ahead and get into our discussing players. Once again, these are players we expect to underperform this week. Chris, go ahead and lead us off.
Yeah, for me, it's wide receiver Adam Thielen. This one's easy. It's pretty much Frank Reich has returned to play calling duty, and that's why Adam Thielen is my discussing player for week 11. No, but honestly, Thielen has picked up 143 yards receiving on 19 catches, 27 targets, 0 touchdowns, and an average of 4.8 fantasy points in his last 3 games. A solid wide receiver 2 target at buy option for a playoff run. The Panthers passing attack only averages 214 yards per game. That's 22nd over. And this week they get the Dallas Cowboys. Over the last 3 weeks, the Cowboys have allowed opposing offenses pass for 144 yards. Dallas's defense hasn't allowed a player to pick up more than 100 receiving yards in a game this season. They've only allowed a touchdown pass to 11 different receivers on the year, and only one player has hauled in more than 1 touchdown pass against Dallas throughout the 2023 season. Only 2 wide receivers have had 7 or more receptions. Bryce Young is going to be the determining factor to Adam Thielen's success this week. Carolina letting up a league worst 26% pressure rate is going against the Dallas Cowboys defense, who holds the league's second best rate when it comes to pressure at 42%. So Dallas defense is going to be looking to eat Bryce Young this weekend, and that is going to equal less opportunity and less share for Adam Thielen, and that's why he's my discussing player for week 11.
Great points, valid points. Let's go ahead, Drew. Talk about your discussing guy.
It's been an awesome year for this guy, Jordan Addison. He's a wide receiver 12 through 10 weeks, but I think this is going to be a rough one for him. He still had 7 targets against New Orleans last week, but with Dobbs clearly favoring T.J. Hawkinson in the passing game and Justin Jefferson potentially making his return, we got to keep an eye on that. He is limited right now. They're still treating him as day-to-day, I think is what they were calling it. But I think we can expect his 20% target share and 34% air yard share to at least take somewhat of a hit. The Vikings also get a matchup against the Denver Broncos this week, who are no longer the doormat of a defense that they were to start the year. The run defense still isn't great, but the pass defense has been tough as of late, though. Over the last 6 weeks, the Broncos have been the 4th toughest matchup for fantasy receivers based on schedule-adjusted fantasy points given up to the position. And that includes 2 matchups they had to play against Kansas City, another matchup against the Buffalo Bills last week. So it's not like they're, padding the stats with easy matchups by any means. So there are options in this Viking offense, spoiler alert, that I feel good about this week, one of which Rhett's going to talk about a little bit later. But Jordan Addison just ain't it for me. The Fantasy Pros Week 11 ECR has him at the wide receiver 30, but I've got him down at wide receiver 38.
Yeah, Addison, tough matchup this week. For my discussing player, let's go ahead and talk about Aaron Jones for a second, who enters as the ECR running back 11, but he's had some very up and down finishes this season and has missed a few games. So he's been mostly a mid guy in a mid offense, coming off of his worst game of the year. 13 carries, 35 yards, which is 2.7 yards per carry. Only 4 catches for 19 yards, 3.7 yards per carry for the year. And he's facing the 9th best run defense in the league in Los Angeles this year. And not to mention, he's only had a 45.5% snap share when he's played, and is playing on a team that only runs the ball 25 times a game and is in a notoriously slow pace on offense. And it seems like he's lost a step because he's only got a 19% juke rate this year, which is 23rd in the league. And it's not like he's seeing a bunch of defenders in the box, because he's only seeing an average of 6.6 defenders in the box per carry. So teams aren't scared of him anymore. That's obvious. And he's only seeing 4.1% stacked front carry rate. And he's averaged against a stacked front 2 yards per carry, and playing behind an offensive line that is the worst run block unit in the league. So all these things make him a not ideal play. And he's also past his prime. So I can't put faith in a guy like that.
Mm-hmm.
Feel it.
So we're going to go ahead and recap our discussions. We have Adam Thielen, Drew profiled Jordan Addison, and I went with Aaron Jones. Let's get into these mid players. Hotel Drew, you're going to go with a homer pick right here. Let's talk about it, baby.
I am going to have a homer pick right here. And this might be the last week you can use this pick with Kyron Williams being eligible to return from IR starting next week. That's not a guarantee it's going to happen, but this is the next week will be the first week it can happen. But I think Darrell Henderson's a great play this week. And while I think you could make the argument that, and I would, that Royce Freeman has been the better runner, Darrell Henderson, he's getting more of the volume, and he's actually getting involved in the passing game. So, volume is king, especially whenever we're talking about running backs. So I tend to lean Darrell Henderson whenever I'm trying to decide which Rams running back to start. Since they both made their season debut in Week 7, Darrell Henderson leads the backfield in rushing attempts. He has 7 targets compared to Royce Freeman's 1 target, and they've split the 2 carries the Rams have had inside the 5. So Henderson's also led the backfield in snaps in 2 out of 3 weeks that both Henderson and Freeman have been active, including their most recent game against Green Bay prior to the bye week. Now, coming out of the bye, the Rams get a matchup against the Seattle Seahawks defense that's given up the most schedule-adjusted fantasy points to their running back position over the last 6 weeks. There has not been a better matchup for fantasy running backs over the last 6 weeks other than the Seattle Seahawks. So if someone had this backfield to themselves, if it was only Darrell Henderson, if it was only Royce Freeman, then this would probably be a busting pick. But since it's a split backfield between the 2 guys, but they do have a plus matchup, Henderson is my mid play this week. The Fantasy Pros Week 11 ECR has him as running back 29, but I've got him up at running back 24. So he's more than just a flex play for me. I think he's a back in RB2.
Love that.
Yeah, it's a great call. And for all of our people that are in the chat, we do see your questions. We're going to get to them. We love you. We appreciate you being here with us tonight. And we will get to them as soon as possible. Now, for our second discussing pick, Chris Batista, go ahead and give us your guy. We discussed his quarterback a little bit earlier. Go ahead and give us the case, buddy.
Yeah, this is mid, right? We're doing mid, right? So I'm going Jerome Ford, running back. Let me just start off by saying, it sucks that Deshaun Watson is hurt, but I'm happy I don't have to hear Drew make him his discussing pick again because he's done it for 2 out of the 10 weeks so far. And I think he just does it to
guilty
get
as charged.
All cheesed and bothered by it.
Also guilty as charged.
Yeah. But for me, my mid pick this week is Cleveland Brown running back Jerome Ford. Like I said, Deshaun Watson placed on the IR in the 3 games without Watson this year. Cleveland Browns are averaging 33 attempts per game. In the 1 game with DTR under center, Ford had 6 targets. He's the lead dog in the backfield for the Cleveland Browns, 60% snap share, running for more than 50% of the team carries. Now, he's not used as much in the pass game as I would like. There has been weeks where he has been the primary receiving back for the Browns, but just not enough to hold that true value as a pass catching running back. In the fantasy points above expected category, he's been pretty consistent, hitting his mark almost every week. RB9 in yards after contact, RB14 in average yards after contact. So he's giving you points after he gets the ball in his hands. The only issue with him is he does not see the ball within the 15. That's Kareem Hunt's job for the Cleveland Browns. As soon as they get in the red zone, as soon as they get close to that end zone, Kareem Hunt gets all the snaps. So that's the one red flag I have for Jerome Ford. He's got one of the easier strength of schedules for running backs rest of the season. 5 of the remaining games, they play bottom 10 defenses against the running backs this week. He's got the Indianapolis Colts allow the 7th most points to the position on the season, allowing 22.5 fantasy points to the position over the last 4 weeks. Over the last 3 weeks, the Colts have allowed the 2nd most rushing yards against running backs, and the running backs are averaging 155 yards per game through that span. Quite simply, Jerome Ford is a safe floor play every game, and with his increased volume and Watson being out, it could hurt him TD-wise. He only has the 1 touchdown with Watson out compared to the 3 with Watson in, but he's a guy that's going to see 16 to 20 touches per game, making him the ultimate mid-floor play week in and week out.
Yeah, it's a great call. I know the injury to Watson is a concern, but I've been a big Jerome Ford guy all season. Took him in a couple spots in preseason drafts, and really and truly I've held on to that and have been pretty happy with the results of that so far this year. As for my mid pick, and Chris, Drew went ahead and alluded to it a little bit earlier, Guys, let's have some fun and let's talk some Ty Chandler facing the Denver Broncos this week. Heads into the week, a shockingly high ECR running back 27. And he is an analytics darling who has got his shot last week with Alexander Madison's concussion. And he responded with quite a bit of volume, 15 carries, 45 yards, got a touchdown as well. And right now, he is the last man standing in a new look run-heavy offense for the Minnesota Vikings. And he gets, you guessed it, the Denver Broncos defense, which gives up a league-high 5.6 yards per carry, has given up over 1,400 rushing yards for the season, 10 touchdowns, and has given up first downs on 27% of their carries. And it's a small sample, but I found an interesting stat for you guys. Per 100 snaps, and I know it's a small sample size, Ty Chandler has been projected to put out 30.3 fantasy points in half PPR formats per 100 snaps. And that is with a 42% usage rate per fantasypros.com. So what does it mean? Well, he's mid because he's a big maybe. Let's be honest about it. But I love betting on athletes, and this is an athlete with a 4.38 40 time that clocks in at about 210 pounds. The projection for me is going to be around 12 carries for 42 yards. But if he hits the end zone, we're hitting a big time for him this week. I love it even more than what Fantasy Pro says. Ty Chandler, 18 carries, 90 yards, and a tutty this week. Let's have some fun and let's say some crazy things. Ty Chandler, my mid play of the week.
UNC legend, Ty Chandler. Love to hear it.
Love it. Love it. Smash play this week.
So to recap our mid players for the week, we have Darrell Henderson. One second, guys. Darrell Henderson, Jerome Ford, and Ty Chandler. And guys, while you're at it, we appreciate you all being here tonight, but we have a ton of things going on over at Fantasy and Frames. Don't forget our website with our articles and our rankings and all our Fantasy and Frames podcast shows like Dynasty 365 for our Dynasty content, our weekly show 4th and Frames for redraft, Shoot the Gap coming up next for IDP content. Also our YouTube channel. We have our waiver wire show every Tuesday at 7:30 Eastern time, answering those last minute waiver wire questions. The mailbag show every Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern with all your fantasy football questions. And the pregame show every Sunday from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m., helping you with those start and sit decisions before every game. So we got a lot of stuff going on, guys. But, it's time, guys. And I just want to go ahead and introduce someone who I've had the pleasure of getting to know through the Scott Fish Bowl this year. You might know him for several reasons. I met him as me and Jason Street on Friday Night Lights. Some of you might know him as George Trucker on Heart of Dixie. But what you may not know is that he has had a very prolific voice acting career in both video games and animation. And for you football fans, he is most notably the famous Colt Cruz in Madden 18 and 19. Yes. My man is a fellow podcast host. He is an a cappella singer in a past life. He is a Florida native, a UCF alum, and an all-around great guy. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to 4th and Frames, Mr. Scott Porter.
What is up, fellas? How you doing tonight?
How the heck are you doing, man?
Man, I'm doing great. Just got done with my son's first ever baseball season. I coached his baseball team. Do I know anything about baseball? No, not really. But did they need people to coach the baseball team? Yes, they did. So did I step up? Yeah, sure. That's what we do,
Yeah,
that's right. So baseball season's over. Fantasy football is still going on, going strong for those who haven't quit. I know people watching this have not quit. So now it's crunch time, so feeling good. I clinched my playoff spot in Scott Fish Bowl last week. So let's go.
Welcome.
Just for you guys that don't know, me and Scott here, we play in the same division, the Alamo Freeze division, and I adopted him as my arch nemesis this season. And it's been a good time. A couple weeks ago, he gave me a hard time because I forgot to put Sam Laporta or Schultz in my lineup, one of those two. The week they went for 52, and he's like, "Bro, you're in too many leagues." And I was like, "Yeah, you're probably right about that." Scott, so look, you want to get into a few questions with us, man, before we go ahead and talk about your players?
Yeah, man, let's do it.
All right, so you've been acting for a long time. You've done a lot of stuff over the years. So I have to ask you, and you can be honest, I know I see the Dillon Panthers jersey, but which project is your favorite project of all time? And I promise you don't have to say Friday Night Lights. What's your favorite thing you've ever done?
Man, Friday Night Lights is where I got my start. Speed Racer was something that was just incredibly cool to do, to work with the Wachowskis and to bring Speed Racer to life. You know, it's over a decade since that movie came out. I feel like it was, you know, ill maligned back when it came out. I feel like people didn't understand what they were watching. I feel like they do now with the superhero universes and all that stuff. So Speed Racer is pretty high up there. But I gotta say, I did a little music video at the beginning of a movie called Music and Lyrics, where I got to be the George Michael to Hugh Grant's, you know, Andrew, whatever the other guy's name was from Wham. And we shot a music video over the course of 2 days. And that was my first ever film role. And to this day, one of the things I had the most fun doing. You know, it's just like one of those things where I had never worked on a movie before. And I'm next to I mean, at the time, he was one of the most bankable movie stars in the world. And I was getting to sing and dance and be silly. And you can look that up. It's Pop Goes My Heart. You can find it on YouTube. It's got a lot of views out there. So, you know, maybe that's the top three. Friday Night Lights, because there's been nothing like it. And then the other two. Yeah. As far as you said, voiceover stuff, I got to say Heimdall, God of War, probably my favorite role to date in video games.
Yeah, I saw you put a tweet out about that the other day, man. Super proud of that. Obviously, you're still going through these days. But Drew also had a question for you, and it's a little bit more fantasy football related.
Okay, yeah, I mean that's what we brought you here. You know, Rhett told us how strong of a fantasy football player you are, and that's what we talk about on this show. So I want you to go back in time for us and let us know. It's one of my favorite things to talk about with fantasy. What got you started with fantasy football, and do you have like a favorite draft pick or a fantasy player from whenever you first got started that always sticks out for you?
Yeah, man. Actually, my first year playing fantasy football, I was doing a little off-Broadway show in New York called Altar Boys. And our stage manager, now, mind you, this is New York City, you know, theater. I'm with all these other actors who went to like conservatories of music. I was an invited walk-on at the University of Central Florida when Dante Culpepper was there. So I am a football fan through and through. I played football in high school and college. I was our school's leading receiver all throughout high school. We played in the Florida semi and quarterfinals my junior and senior year. Oh. And, you know, at the end of the day, I heard them talking about football, and I turned around to the stage manager. I was like, yo, what's what you got going on? Where do we watch football? Because nobody else here cares about it. And he was like, man, we got a league. And you started 22-man roster. I was like, wait, hold on. What? Not 22 men. Sorry. You got to subtract the offensive lineman, but we had a punter. We had a kicker. Punters got net yards. Punters got bonus points for inside the 5, inside the 10, inside the 20. Wow. So my very first ever fantasy football league, shout out to Dennis and the boys back in New York, was in this full-on IDP. You started 4 defensive linemen. You started 3 linebackers. You started 4 defensive backs. It was a full-on crucible. And so then when I got to Austin working on a football show, I was like, yo, we're about to do this. Like, I got all the stunt guys, the other actors. And we started a Friday Night Lights fantasy football league.
Nice.
What I didn't know is none of these other dudes had any knowledge of what football really was. And one of the stunt guys, Ryan Nail, he stood up at the very beginning of the draft and said, I take Lovie Smith. And we said, what? I said, I invited the wrong people. He goes, yeah, Lovie Smith. And I said, man, that's a coach, bro. You can't. He's like, yeah, Chicago Bears. No, I'm like, you're the coach. Then we had to stop the draft, explain to this guy. So he's like, fine, give me Randy Moss. In the second round, he said, give me Tom Brady. And it was the year that they broke all the records and went undefeated. The guy won. Man. He won the league, people.
Should have let him have Lovey.
That's the most fantasy football thing I've ever heard in my life.
But, you know, for me, at the end of the day, like, I like to try and get ahead. So my best decisions, you know, ever in fantasy football, like as I've gone through the years, is to try and like stay ahead. Not as far ahead as Ryan Nail did when he tried to draft a coach, but that's how I got into fantasy football. And that really ignited the love for me. You know, I've been a commissioner of a league for, you know, ever since. So 18 years now, you know, commissioner of my own league. And I played in a bunch of other ones.
That's so awesome, man.
Yeah.
That's so fun. So I think we have a couple questions in the chat that we're going to go ahead and get to before we get to your players.
Yeah.
I'm going to pull them up. Before I pull them up, Scott, welcome to the show. Appreciate you having on. I got a couple questions for you, 2-parter. Rhett mentioned Scott Fishbowl. I have to know, did you study the scoring before you drafted? We hosted over 100 mock drafts here at Fantasy and Frames. So we were all about just breaking everything down. Did you study it? If you didn't study it, how did you pivot in season? And question number 2, we understand Rhett's your rival. I will mute his mic and give you the floor to chirp him as much as you want right now. So go ahead.
So here's the thing, man. Number 1 rule in fantasy football, know your league settings, period. Yep. Right? So Scott Fishbowl, he's changing it up every year. So every year you got to get in there early, right? Every year you got to find that one special website that has the rules set up where you can mock draft, where you can look and see what the trends are. You can see what ADP specifically for Scott Fishbowl is. So hell yeah, I did my research. Hell yeah, I was out there drafting. And if you look at my team, you can tell that I did. I am so tight end heavy. And it is carrying me. People gave me, and including Rhett. All right, here's the thing, man. He was down. He was down on Hawkinson. Didn't like Hawkinson. I waited on my second QB. I punted because I believed in a guy named Sam Howell, and I really believed in him. And I took him so late as my second QB. You know, and some people said, "Hey, that's a nice pick," but they hated me taking McLaurin over Dotson. Hey, where's that anti-McLaurin and pro Dotson love now? Oh, I'm sorry, Dotson's on waivers. That's my bad. My bad. You know, at the end of the day, yeah, know your league setup. I took Hawkinson, and I have a couple other tight ends that are just, you know, Evan Ingram, high volume guy. You know, he's not. See, Kittle. The thing with Kittle, I love Kittle. I was looking at him a lot, but he's a big play guy and a TD guy. He's not a move the chains guy, and we're getting points for first downs this year. So I wanted guys who would, give me 11 yards, give me some bonus points in the tight end premium league, and I'll take it. So that's what I ended up doing. I have 2 stacks. I have Burrow and Higgins, and that's been a little bit rough, but I have Howell and McLaurin. And even though McLaurin's not setting the world on fire, he's still moving the chains. Yeah. So at the end of the day, that's all I needed. I punted on running back. I took Raheem Mostert a little bit later than folks. Ooh. And everybody started, giving me a little bit of stuff for that pick. Devon Etchen, he's coming. And yes, he came. But I mean, they both prove they can work together. So I got 13 wins. I'd be in on points anyway. And Rhett, are you still sitting outside the playoffs, or did you sneak back up in?
I think I'm slowly but surely getting there. I will say this though. I don't care how much you defend yourself right now. We have a very stern nickname for your top running back that you picked this year. I believe you went with what's his name? Alexander Madison?
Now, hold on. Alexander Madison. I had just played cornhole with the man on ESPN in a pro-am tournament. And I told Alexander Madison, who I took to overtime in cornhole. And I had a huge 3-bagger in the 10th frame to take them to overtime. And then my pro put one in the dirt. Shout out to him though. He carried me most of the day. But at the end of the day, man, I know the opportunity is there. And you were just talking about Ty Chandler. And guess who picked up Ty Chandler 2 weeks before anybody started talking about him?
Not
guess who's got Ty Chandler in his starting lineup this week? So come on, man. Like, give me some credit. I'm willing to say, and this is the one of the other most important things I look at, man. Be willing to make a decision quickly if you find out that you're wrong. If you find out that you were wrong. But Madison had some big games. He did what I needed him to do. He had some catches. And you know what? He's a cloud of dust guy. He's gotten a bunch of first downs. So I'll take what I can get and move on to the more exciting, more explosive players later.
As much as I respect you for your fantasy play and your process, I can't wait to DM Alexander Madison and tell him that his close friend Scott Porter called him a cloud of dust guy. But it's fine.
No, man. No. He is a be great kind of guy, man. He's out there doing his thing, but he's doing exactly what I need him to do. So Alexander Madison, he told me he was going to wear a wig, and when he scored a touchdown, actually like pull it off and do like the Hamilton thing. I haven't seen it yet. So if you do slide into his DM, say, Scott's still waiting for that touchdown celebration you promised him.
Yes, Scott's waiting on it, of course. So look, we got a couple questions, and Scott, we'll let you chime in first from our watchers and our listeners. First question. You're asking our trace question: would you flip Trevor Lawrence and Saquon Barkley for Justin Fields, Evan Ingram, and Jerome Ford?
Yes. Listen, man, the rest of this year for Barkley is going to be really, really tough. And I don't blame anybody, even in Dynasty, for trying to move on from him. Trevor Lawrence, I don't know what's not clicking down there. But one of my biggest mistakes of the year, we're talking about mistakes, right, was really buying in on Ridley and Lawrence. In one of my leagues, in a contract league, I gave both those guys 2 years. And I'm staring down the barrel of having him on my team again next year. And that's going to be a little bit of a tough pill to swallow. Fields, listen, man, this is an audition for him, for the Bears. It's time to cut him loose. The Bears, they're holding 2 top draft picks next year at this point in time. If they want to make a quarterback change, they can. So if they run him into the ground, that's what it is. Ingram is steady. And Jerome Ford, man, it's going to be a rough rest of the year for him. But having another running option in the backfield, he still looks great. He even looked great last week against Baltimore. I'd take the Fields, Ingram, and Ford side if you're looking for upside. I don't know that Trevor Lawrence gets it figured out this year. I think that defense is great. I think Etienne has been really, really good. But I don't know that he's going to blow up at any point this season.
All right, we got another redraft offer, and this is a lot going on. Hope you have your pencil and paper ready. He wants to trade Mark Andrews, Joe Mixon, and James Cook for Kelsey and Bijan. He has a full 12-team, full PPR with Stroud, Pollard, Mixon, James Cook, Khalil Herbert, Kareem Hunt, Tajay Spears, Stephon Diggs, Ben and Ayuk, Hollywood Brown, Josh Downs, Jaden Reed, Mark Andrews, and Trey McBride. First off, great job constructing that roster. My goodness.
Yep.
So,
yeah, man.
This
is tough because, I mean, look, Kelsey is what Kelsey is, and he'll put up big points. But, I mean, who's the best player in this deal? It's Kelsey. Fine. Sure. What do we expect from Bijan the rest of the year? We all know that Arthur Smith is a spoiled rich boy who's very, very stubborn.
Oh, man. Don't get me started.
And McBride, spoiler alert, I'm going to talk about later. So, I mean, for me, I don't know, fellas. I probably don't do the deal, but I'm interested to hear what you guys got to say.
Yeah, I like the Kelsey Bijan side. Kelsey, like you said, the best player in the whole deal, probably outscores Andrews and James Cook rest of the season every week. And then you got Bijan, who Mixon's going to see a lot of opportunity in that Cincinnati backfield, but his efficiency numbers haven't been the greatest. I know Bijan Robinson has been down. We've highlighted it multiple times on this show in that Atlanta offense. But if they continue to trend like they did, anything like they did last week, I know it was his hometown there playing in Arizona. I like Bijan rest of the season in that Atlanta backfield. I love Kelsey over Mixon, over James Cook. I like Kelsey over Andrews. Andrews is a stud tight end, but Kelsey's that dude. And as long as Taylor Swift is in the stands, I mean, Kelsey's outscoring everybody.
Funny.
Supposedly her parents and his parents are both going to be meeting each other for the first time this coming week. So I don't know what he's going to put up, but it's going to be astronomical. It's going to be astronomical this week for Kelsey. I'm fine with it.
With the change from Dorsey in Buffalo, I know James Cook put the ball on the ground 3 times, maybe 4 if you count when he dribbled it to himself. But I mean, do we see him get a lot more run going forward? Do we really think that Latavius Murray is the answer? I mean, it's just like that's my only thing, because if we're waiting for that with Bijan, something's got to change. And Josh Allen's not carrying that team this year. I don't know, but I could make the deal. I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, and they still have Leonard Fournette, too, who hasn't been activated from the practice squad yet. I don't know if they're just waiting for him to hopefully gain his playoff Lenny form. I don't know what the delay is on that, but maybe these struggles are enough. But, I mean, to Chris's point, Bijan, that team that was constructed, it seems like it's a pretty good team built for the playoffs. The Atlanta Falcons have the second best strength of schedule for weeks 15 to 17 in the fantasy playoffs. So if they do finally decide, okay, it's very clear Bijan is the better player, let's just give him the rock. He has a schedule of gold in the fantasy playoffs, and Kelsey as well. Not like he needs schedule help, but his fantasy schedule is also, I think he plays the Bengals in championship week. They're the second best matchup for fantasy tight ends. So it would be tough for me not to make that deal.
Yeah, and one thing before we get into this last question, Scott, the thing that impresses me the most is that you somehow come in and been able to speak all of our love languages. You hit some IDP stuff for Jorge. You hated on Arthur Smith for Drew. I'm a contract league guy. I mean, so like you're hitting bingo tonight, bud. Good job.
Yeah, man. Hey, I just got to say, if you get Kelsey, see if you can move McBride for another piece.
Yeah.
I mean, because for me, like, there's got to be somebody in your league that understands the value that McBride's going to have all the way out. if you Andrews and McBride together, man, like those are two great trade pieces. If you get Kelsey back, then look at that next move, right? Trade.
I like that.
Think about as they go along.
Chess, baby.
I think this man is about to replace me on this show, by the way. He's been so good tonight. But anyway, last question from Chandler Constantino. Great to have you tonight, Chandler. He said, start Burrow Thursday night, in which Thursday or Monday nights have been like 24-7 or the under, with the Ravens being great on defense. But he doesn't know how to put 4 quarters together, or Justin Fields versus Detroit in his first week back.
Oh, man. Listen, guys, if it's anybody but Fields, maybe I'm saying sit Burrow. And I'm a big Burrow guy. Rhett knows from the league. I drafted Burrow in the first round. I believe in the talent around him. Burrow still does have a very good connection with Tyler Boyd. He still has one of the best receivers in the game. Even Irwin stepped up last week. He's got enough pieces around him. The thing is Justin Fields, we got to remember, it's a grip situation, right? This guy is prone to turnovers already. He's not necessarily the most accurate passer. This was a fractured right thumb. First week coming back, I do have a little bit of hesitancy to start him over Burrow. It really depends though, right? If you got to go, big points, you're playing against the first place team in your league and you need to swing for it, sure, Fields. But if you just need a steady couple of points from this guy, the rest of your team can carry, because Fields can give you 4. Fields could give you -2. There's that chance, right? So just understand your situation. If you need to swing big, you need points to make up some ground in the playoff race. Yeah, Fields could be your guy because of his legs, but I don't know. What do you guys think?
I've literally got Burrow and Fields back to back. I've got Burrow 1 spot ahead. I think the advantage you might have if you start Burrow on Thursday night, if he does well, then hey, you're off to a good start. But if he puts up a stinker, that gives you some time to kind of pivot with the rest of your lineup. Like you might, if you had some high upset guys sitting on your bench and you put in some safer players, put those high upset guys in your lineup, so it gives you a little bit more time to pivot the rest of your lineup decisions as well. But it's tough to sit Burrow as he's starting to hit his stride and look better as the year goes on. So I would lean Burrow, but it's really close.
Yeah, and agree with all of that. But Scott, we're going to go ahead and get into our next section. I couldn't get Kyle Chandler here to give us the world famous lines, but you were introduced to a lot of people as Jason Street, as a star quarterback of the Dillon Panthers on Friday Night Lights. By the way, it's so glad to see you healed up, because that was actually an autobiography and not at all a fictional show. But we wanted to play off of that and have you give us 3 fantasy players for the rest of the season based off of that famous Dillon Panthers slogan, clear eyes, full heart, can't lose, and give you a chance to flex your fantasy muscle a little bit. Not that you haven't already done that tonight. So first off, Scott, go ahead and give us your clear eyes player, one that you see developing into a league winner for the rest of the 2023 year.
Oh, man, there's a lot of hot names out there. A lot of people talking about the Tank Dells, the Charbonnets, the Ty Chandlers, and I can see, where they're coming from on that. Listen, the last couple of years we've had Penny show up and just win people leagues, right? Mm-hmm. So what you could kind of be looking for is, hey, who athletically profiles better than the starter, right? You look at Brian Robinson, you go, man, maybe Rodriguez behind him. If Brian Robinson goes down, it's not Gibson that's going to step in. It's going to be Chris Rodriguez, who profiled better than Brian Robinson, playing at Kentucky against the same defenses that Brian Robinson did. So at the end of the day, you could say that, right? You can go that direction. But I think you have to look at the global scope of the league. There's been so many quarterback injuries and so many teams, you don't really know what they are. So I don't know that it's so much that we're going to have somebody come out of nowhere. I think it's someone that's already kind of hit, but can carry you the rest of the way. So you got to then look at your Josh Dobbs. You got to look at your Kyron Williams coming back off of injury, right? He was a waiver wire guy, but I'm going to go with my dude, Trey McBride. And I think at the end of the day, Kyler loves tight ends. It doesn't matter if it was who everybody thought was washed in Zach Ertz, even Philadelphia, he rejuvenated Zach Ertz, right? He's in an offense where he is so superiorly athletic to Zach Ertz at this point. Ertz's injury has allowed Trey McBride to shine. I think that guy's going to have massive target volume, and tight end is this thing that so many people have been trying to piece together all year. Oh, Michael Mayer's hot. Oh, Musgrave's hot. Oh, all these rookies are hot. No, Trey McBride's been in that system for a couple of years. I know it's a new coaching staff and everything, but he still has a bit of a connection with everybody around him. He's been in the league. It's 30-year breakout time. Let's go. Trey McBride, I think, is going to be a guy that can carry some people to championships who had maybe that zero in the tight end slot all year long as they've been trying to piece it together. I think that's where I'd go. The other guy, I got to give love back to Texas. Dak Prescott, people left for dead at the beginning of the season. He said they didn't quite know. New offensive coordinator. Everybody gave the Cowboys a bunch of crap because they let Kellen Moore go. At the end of the day, this offense is very vertical right now. Dak Prescott is getting that ball out. He's getting upfield. He's been accurate. He's been a killer out there, and I don't think that's going to slow down. So those two guys, a lot of people got Dak on their rosters, but Trey McBride, that's my man.
Yeah, I was actually trying to get, speaking of being ahead of the curve, which you mentioned, I was in preseason trying to acquire in a contract league. I was trying to say, hey, what can I do for McBride? This guy's like, no, I want to have a cheap starting tight end on my roster. Obviously, didn't work hard enough. I'm not the hardest working man in fantasy like you are, Scott. But you know what? I'll take that L, and I will admit all this time, me trashing you all this time, I was wrong, man. Like, appreciate you being on tonight. Drew, Chris, one of you guys go ahead and give me a guy you might think turn into a quick league winner.
Go ahead, Drew.
He mentioned some hot guys. Devon Achane's coming back just in time to possibly do that. His schedule's a little bit rough, but with how good he's been on a per touch basis, he's a guy I like a lot. But I already talked about it a little bit. My number one pick, I guess it could be a full heart pick too, because I can't quit him. But Bijan Robinson, if he just gets the touches he deserves with the schedule he has, like, the guy's going to win everybody leagues if Arthur Smith will just let him. And so, I can't quit Bijan. I got a full heart for Bijan. I cover both of them, I think, but that would be my number one pick for that. I've been trying to trade for him everywhere I can because I can't give up hope.
Speaking of guys you can't give up hope on, go ahead and give us that full hearts player, Scott.
Well, man, I have Bijan everywhere. I am right there with you, Drew. The way he profiled, I worked out a night of trade in my best friends league where the guy right in front of me took Bijan. I took Saquon, and then I worked all weekend long and got Bijan from him before the season even started. That's how much. And you don't do that. That's a cardinal sin, right? In fantasy, don't trade for somebody.
The RBs. Yeah, especially with the RBs.
But I knew. Listen, man, I've got a team that's so full of full hearts guys. I've got Tony Pollard, Chris Olave, and Justin Fields all on one team. It's been a rough go. Bijan was my answer, but I'm going to go with Chris Olave and just say, man, he showed signs of life last week. Some of those unrealized air yards have started to land. Michael Thomas is out. The target tree is going to be a little more streamlined now. Shaheed definitely has a defined role. And Olave is going to have his as well. The guy's just too talented. Regardless of the quarterback play, I just think that, I haven't been able to stop utilizing him all year long. And I paid the price sometimes. But, outside of Bijan, I'd say Olave is just that other guy that, don't quit yet. Hopefully it starts to come through and they put it together for the rest of the year.
Yeah, you're talking to two New Orleans Saints fans here who have struggled, me and Chris, with all of this. Derek Carr being extremely average stuff. Alvin Kamara getting 13 receptions in a week for like 35 yards. Like, it's an offense that's been a little bit tough to watch this year. But, Chris Olave last week, especially if coming off of that bye week, if Derek Carr isn't ready, you're going to see a big Olave week if Jameis plays, because we know Jameis Winston has those world famous YOLO balls going on. So, Chris Olave, good call. I can't quit him either. I want him so bad to break through and help us out the rest of this year. But 5-5 right now, the Saints. Oh, it's been tough. But our can't lose player, a guy that you feel like you really need to start. Let's go ahead and talk about it this week and possibly for the rest of the season.
Oh man, so for me, I kind of was, when I saw the clear eyes part. I took this one as like the must start this week. And if I can say I can't believe I'm going to go with a defense, but if you are not telling me that the Steelers defense is going to be the best start of the year after everything that's going on in Cleveland, currently, I just think that Steelers defense is really coming around, and I think you're going to have 30 sitting in your in your defensive slot. There's so many guys. I heard you talk about Ty Chandler earlier. He was definitely up there. I'm a Broncos fan, so it's tough for me to say that guy. But I think this week is going to be an Austin Eckler fest. I think this guy is the guy. I don't know if we're talking must start season long, if we're talking, pay up in DFS, but I just feel like this is an explosion game. I'm talking 3-4 touchdowns for Austin Eckler. Everything is set up so well. They're still trying to figure out who's catching the ball. How long can they really get away with this group of receivers? If Green Bay decides to completely say we're denying you Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler is going to eat this week. So that's my kind of like must start this week. Those two guys, Steelers D and Eckler.
I'm such a big Eckler guy. He's one of these guys that I've got him salary cap leagues, redraft leagues. Anywhere I can get Austin Eckler, I'm getting him because I just trust that guy so much. And he's just been dependable between the tackles, outside the tackles, 100 catches last year, missed some time this year, but he's come back pretty solid these past few weeks. So go ahead and Drew, quickly give us a can't lose, must start guy this week. I know we talked busting, but go ahead and give us bonus player real quick.
Chris, I'll let you go ahead, man, because my internet's still trying to the hotel internet is cutting in and out. So I'll let you go in while this is trying to come in, and I'll come in after you.
Yeah, I mean, my busting pick was Brian Robinson, running back for the Washington Commanders this week. I love the matchup. So for me, he's a must start. But anyone outside of that, I'm probably going to roll with Jonathan Taylor. He's been the lead dog for the Indianapolis Colts as of late. And if there's a definition of must start at the running back position for a guy that sees a healthy amount of volume, it's Jonathan Taylor. I'm going to ride Jonathan Taylor to a ton of championships this year because he's just going to be leaned on in the back half of the season. Zach Moss, put him in the memoriam at the Oscars because it's over. For me, it's Jonathan Taylor.
Can I give you one more? Because you said the words must start next to each other.
Yep.
And everyone's so excited about Achane. Do not back away from Mostert.
Yep.
If he's healthy, you get this clear, and this is like old man questionable stuff, right? This is like rest day, like questionable stuff. You see that questionable? Yeah. Don't be scared of Raheem Mostert. He's still gonna get his, and they've showed that they can be together on the same field and still both go off. Who knows? This is Achane's first game back. We don't know if it's gonna be a snap count, but let me just say, don't back away from Mostert either. I'm putting him everywhere I got him.
I like it.
Yeah, I agree completely. I'm gonna go just a little bit deeper in terms of the wide receiver position. It was a guy I was considering for my mid pick, so it was an easy one for me to transition to. Give me Rashee Rice with the Kansas City Chiefs. They're playing the Philadelphia Eagles in prime time, and whenever you see the Philadelphia Eagles on your schedule, you might be a little bit scared away. But in terms of their secondary, I mean, they're right now over the last 6 weeks. They're giving up the third most schedule adjusted fantasy points to the wide receiver position. So I think Rashee Rice has been the best. I should say second best option because Travis Kelce basically is just the wide receiver one there. But in terms of the actual wide receivers on the team, I think Rashee Rice is the guy there as far as that goes. And I think there's going to be plenty to go around this week going up against Philadelphia. They're going to have to score. Kansas City's coming off the bye, so he might be a little bit forgotten. So don't be scared to fire up Rashee Rice this week.
Woo!
Yeah, good stuff right there. I think we have a question in the chat real quick. Stroud over Lamar. Oof, that's tough.
I mean, how can you stop rolling with this, man? Everybody said the end of the ride was going to be last week against this Bengals defense that has just been really clicking. They've got too much pressure on the defensive front. Houston, look, Herculean effort by CJ Stroud, giving them a run game because of how well he's playing, right? Look, run games take a while to develop. I get it. Offensive line has to gel. I get it. But Devin Singletary goes for $150 and a touch. Don't get it twisted. That's because people are respecting CJ Stroud, right? Mm-hmm. And if that means that defenses have to start balancing themselves a little bit more, I mean, Stroud is just he's so good. And Lamar's been on a bit of a cold streak. He's got flashes here or there. That offense is still trying to figure itself out. I'd start Stroud. Why not? I'm call me Riverboat Ron. I'm just rolling the dice. Let's go.
I like it. I love the Stroud start. I love the Stroud start. It's a great spot.
Yeah, we've been also very pro Houston Texans throughout this podcast this year. So that was Scott Porter's clear eyes, full hearts, can't lose players. Scott, we got to go ahead and let you go tonight. But before we let you go, the frame is yours. Go ahead and plug anything you got going on right now. You're a busy man. We appreciate your time. So go ahead. What you got going on right now, man?
Yeah, this is we just put out a brand new in-depth interview for Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, which is a brand new video game that's coming out from Rocksteady Games. They did all the Arkham, the Batman games. I Am the Flash. They unveiled that today. I'm playing the Flash in that game, which is super cool. Ginny and George is coming back for seasons 3 and 4 on Netflix. And you can find me giving Rhett the business in the Scott Fish Bowl and pushing Pete into the playoffs. I know you had a question earlier for me. What was my best ever fantasy football draft situation? 3 years ago in an experts league with a bunch of other experts. I was the only celebrity. I was catching a bunch of flack. It's a dynasty league, full point PPR. Everybody was goo over all of these running backs. I didn't understand it. It's a dynasty league. I grabbed Tyreek Hill, Devonta Adams, Calvin Ridley in the first 3 rounds, and I won 2 championships in a row. So outside of that, taking Gronk and Calvin Johnson and Drew Brees in 2011 gave me my only ever undefeated season. I like to buck trends. I try and get ahead of it a little bit early. Sometimes I'll draft 4 kings in the first 4 rounds if I don't love the depth. If I don't love like the top end guys at running back and wide receiver, I'll just take 4 really great players, one at each position. And nowadays, you don't get flack for that anymore. But I did back in 2011. So that's it. That's all I got to say.
Man,
bravo.
You've been out here giving us the business tonight, Scott. We appreciate that. So look, guys, that's where we are tonight. For our man Scott Porter, who can be found on X/Twitter at Scott Porter. For Chris Battistell at FFChrisB. For Drew Scott at Drew3MR. I am Redman. You can find me on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, at Armanuel Sports. We're out, guys. Texas forever.
Yeah.